Welcome to the Executives Lounge. This is your podcast host, Christine Fauner. I am bringing you amazing stories from amazing women in leadership from across the globe. Let's get started. Today we are here with Taylor Swope. She comes to us from Brooklyn, New York. She is the chief executive artist for Little Hippie. Taylor started Little Hippie in 2002, and she started it in her tiny apartment in New York City. She started creating kids' clothing inspired by her love of music, awe for the wonderment of children, and a deep faith in the value of playing outdoors. Ooh, that speaks to me. Today, this beautiful idea and Taylor's love of music has grown into so much more than creative clothing for the people. Little Hippie is a lifestyle and a movement here to foster creativity and to nurture the magic inside all of us. Taylor, welcome to the show.
Hi, thanks for having me.
So I absolutely love that you started from this tiny apartment idea of, I think you were saying that you were creating some baby outfits. Here you are from 2002 to 2023. Why don't you tell us your story?
I'd be happy to. I did start with kids' clothes. Before that, I was kind of experimenting with different things, mostly just drawn to the music festival scene and live music culture in general, and wanting to be at as many shows and festivals as I could and trying to find a way to do that. And I had learned how to make t-shirts. I was making them with heat press, like a heat press transfer. So it looks like a sandwich press, but it's like two pieces of hot iron that you press a piece of transfer paper onto a t-shirt. And that did not last long, luckily, because that's not a very good way to make t-shirts. But I was doing that, and that's how I was able to make them on my kitchen counter. And when I say tiny kitchen counter, I mean I lived in a 550 square foot apartment that I shared with someone else, and usually a stranger. I had a tiny second bedroom, and I rented it all the time to different people from Craigslist. And so there was just always a rotating cast of people who were witnessing the evolution of what I was doing. But tiny kitchen counter, and that was the only extra space there was to work. And so I would set up the heat press on there, and I would make t-shirts. And I was making adult t-shirts, and they weren't really what I wanted to be making. I was making them with someone else at the time, and they were mostly his ideas. And then I got the idea for Little Hippie, and I kind of sat on it for a couple of months, and then we were buying t-shirts in the wholesale district in New York, and we went one day, and I saw some little kids t-shirts, baby t-shirts. I was so just starting and had so little money that any decision was a big decision like that. And I was working with someone, and everything was negotiation, and I had to fight to buy those 24 t-shirts. And then once I got them home, I had to fight for transfer paper. We only had so many pieces of transfer paper. And so I was allowed to use one sheet of transfer paper. And I made a really simple logo. It just said Little Hippie. And I was able to fit 7 of them on that one piece of paper. And I cut them out, and I put them on 7 of the 24 t-shirts, and I took them to a little festival that weekend in October, little fall festival, and I sold them all like within the first hour of getting there or something. So I was like, okay, I'm onto something. And that was the October 2002. And January 2003, I made Little Hippie official. I started it as an actual business, and trademarked it, and registered littlehippie.com, registered like every variation of littlehippie.com I could, and still own all those URLs today. And found a business license and built it from there.
You know, when we had first chatted, you had talked about an impact of a really important event that happened many years ago now. But, one that's impacted every single New Yorker I've ever met, and that was 9/11.
I started going to festivals the summer of 2001, and I was barely out of college. I wanted to be a photographer. I graduated college as an aspiring editorial photographer, and I was working at a photo agency earlier that year or the year before, and doing other odd jobs, photography related, assisting photographers and stuff. And I needed a portfolio, and I around the same time as I was starting to get serious about that, I heard about music festivals for the first time. So I thought that'd make a pretty cool subject for a portfolio. So I figured out how to get myself press passes for the summer, and I went to 10 festivals that summer. And the music festival scene was very nascent. It was the summer before Bonnaroo, and that's when everything really changed. And at the end of the summer, I went to one last festival, and it was up in Massachusetts. I drove up to Massachusetts by myself, and I thought, I want to know what it's like to go to a festival and not work, not take pictures. I just want to go and see what everyone else is experiencing. And I met the person I was just referring to at that festival and brought him home to New York with me the next day after the festival. We went up to New York to hang out for a couple of days. And then the next morning we woke up and it was 9/11. Yeah, nothing could prepare you for the impact of that. Or, I mean, the to call it life-changing is certainly minimizing. And for me, the way it changed my life was that this person who I had just met invited me to leave the city with him. And because I had been freelance for a year, I couldn't imagine what I was going to do otherwise. And it was obvious right away that there wasn't going to be work in New York. And here was this invitation to go to more festivals, more concerts, and learn how to support myself doing that. And with someone who had been doing that for a while. And so I left the next day. I really didn't think much of it. I was 23 years old, and I just knew I wanted to leave. But I didn't. I wasn't trying to leave New York. Like I had an apartment. I never gave it up. I wasn't trying to. I didn't leave thinking I wasn't coming back. I didn't leave knowing how long I was going. I just knew leave today. That was it.
When you started making these shirts and you started making these clothing line options for people for these festivals, what was your reason? What for you made you shift from, being a freelance photographer to this passion space?
It's not a question that's ever really been posed to me exactly that way. That's interesting. And it's so obvious too, but I don't really have a great answer other than water flows downhill. It was like no one was saying, hey, come with me and we'll be photographers. No one offered me the opportunity to, let's say, go on the road with the band as their photographer or something. It's just that this was what was put in front of me. And I was looking for a way to earn a living creatively. That's the parallel between them, right? I guess I should also say that I didn't think I was not going to be a photographer. Like I didn't think I was making this big change. I remember the next year still trying to do photography. Like when Bonnaroo launched the next year, that was the last press pass I ever got, because I was still trying to be who I thought I was going to be and who I was actually becoming. And I was straddling this divide that was very challenging to try to be both things. It wasn't so much that I wanted to start a clothing line or that I wanted to build a brand or anything like that. I just wanted to live a creative life and a life independent of traditional employment. And I did whatever I could do to do that, and followed the opportunities that were presented to me along those lines. And I also didn't not become a photographer. One of the primary roles that I play in this business is photographer. And my business has grown and evolved as photography has evolved. When I started, I was still shooting on film, and I did darkroom photography in college and for a number of years afterwards. And so as that technology has evolved, so has my business with it. And I never wasn't a photographer. It just didn't end up being what I thought it was going to be.
Yeah. Well, and I think you touch on something that a lot of entrepreneurs know, but a lot of people non-entrepreneurial may not know, which is, you have to have a passion for your work to build something from nothing, from an idea. and you wear a lot of hats, and hopefully many of those hats are a passion place for you because you have to wear them. Right. And so, being able to say, well, I am a photographer and I am a designer and I am a creative and I am. But I think that's an important point that you make, is that you didn't have to make a choice between being this and being that. You are.
Yeah, and it probably took me a while to understand that and fully accept that, because they did seem compartmentalized in the beginning. But once I had products that needed photographing, it was all kind of obvious that, like, I was never going to hire someone else to do that part of it. That was always going to be what I was going to do. And I would say that my photography has as much to do with how I've grown my business as anything. And without photography, it's pretty hard to, and, even before I wanted to be a photographer, I wanted to be a writer. And I'm that also. I'm my business requires tons of writing constantly. And the journey that I've been on with it has been a story that I've been writing as I've been going. Like, even when it's just in little bits, like captions on social media, or before social media, I had a paper catalog and I would write an intro to that, or even just an email to a customer can have a bit of story in it. And so I'm always writing and I'm always creating, whether it's designing or taking pictures or just conceptualizing the path forward for the business. It's all creative.
Did you ever think your business would be as big as it is now?
I think I thought it would be bigger. I think, at least in the beginning, when you're young, you have these, like, kind of, you don't have the perspective to know what size even really is. And so I think I thought that it would grow much bigger without knowing what that would actually mean for me, as for my job, for my lifestyle. And now I have the perspective to know that, like, it might not be that much fun to be that big. That, there's a sweet spot in growing a business where, if you start a business because you're looking for freedom, you're going to lose it pretty quickly if you get past a certain point. And, one of the fastest ways to lose your freedom of schedule is to hire people. My employees offer me a certain amount of freedom in that I can rely on them to get certain things done so that I don't have to do it. And they give me some amount of schedule flexibility, but I can't just disappear. I can't not be there when they need information from me. And there was a time where my business was a certain size that I could generally do whatever I wanted. And I might suffer some financial consequences, but no personal one. No one else was affected by my choice if I wanted to disappear for a week, a month, a weekend, or whatever. But there's plenty of days now where I still want it to be bigger. I'd love to open another store and be on both coasts, or maybe have a couple more so that I'm in different cities. But I'm more wary now of what that would mean for me. Like, I'm very comfortable at home now, whereas I was always on the road before. And so when I think about, like, oh yeah, that would be cool to open a store in a few other cities, my next thought is, well, you better have a comfortable place to live in all of those cities. And that's a tall order. So I recognize that there's a trade-off now, whereas before I wasn't concerned with that.
Freedom comes with prices, I suppose, is how we look at that.
Yeah.
You talked about, growing the business basically from yourself to having employees and having a shop. What kind of leader are you, and how do you acknowledge and maximize your strengths? And how has that maybe changed over time?
I would say it has changed over time. I've made an effort to become a better leader, but I think that being a better leader also just means being a better person. And I am very conscious to be a good person to the people that I lead. Before, when I was younger, it was a very different type of leading because it was temporary. I would lead people for events. So they were high pressure, intense situations where we had a lot of fun and a lot of stress and not a lot of sleep, and everything was heightened, but it was over within a few days. And often, there'd be conflicts or eruptions of just, it's a stressful environment, and not everyone is great at handling it. Some people really, they have a really hard time when they are pushed to those kinds of limits, myself included. I mean, I was all right at it, but I would often just run out. It was very challenging. And so now I'm definitely much calmer, and uh, I have learned to approach mistakes with the benefit of the doubt, that uh, mistakes are made by accident, not intentionally. It's different when you're in those short-term situations. You kind of grab whoever's available and who's up for the task. When you're in a longer-term situation, you aren't stuck with that. You wouldn't. It would be a mistake to stay stuck with that. So with the people I work with now, I really do try to make sure they feel safe, that I know that mistakes are a part of the learning process, and that it's okay if they make a mistake, and that we'll fix it and we'll teach them how to not make it again. And so long as they maintain an interest in learning how to not make the mistake again, and they take responsibility and accountability, I think everything's okay. Like, I don't think that there's any need to pitch fits when something goes wrong. And, sometimes we might end up with a customer who's less than pleased because they didn't get what they were expecting, or they weren't communicated with the way that they expected, but we're usually able to fix it. And typically those people we can convert, and as long as you handle them with respect, they come around and they end up being grateful for your help. So I've taught my employees that, and I've taught them that it's okay, that not everything happens according to plan. This wasn't me in school, but lots of people are like, I don't need to learn geometry or whatever. Why do I need to learn, or whatever it might be? I don't need to learn another language. Like, with the things that they struggle with, they think I'm never going to use this. And so I try to connect those dots. Like, this is why I'm teaching you this. This is how this will help you, and how you can use this outside of this situation as well.
I think that's huge. I think, I always talk about the difference between mentorship and advocacy. And, mentorship is giving advice or telling somebody what they should or shouldn't do, or, mentorship is important. But when you start talking about life lessons and you start showing somebody how to navigate their own space, that's when you head into the advocacy. So I love that. So you and I met because of our love of Phish, right? Phish the band, not Phish the food.
Yeah.
We met because of our love of the band Phish, and there's a vibrant Phish women's community out there in the tens of thousands. I'm wondering if you can help our listeners understand what it's like to be a vendor at a festival.
The first part of your answer is, it's exhausting. It's just absolutely exhausting. And there's a few reasons for that. One is that we have to get there so early in the morning to get a spot, and then we have to set up, and we drive show to show. We work before the show, we work after the show, and then we drive to the next show hours ahead of everyone else. And a lot of the time it's hot, and a lot of the time what few hours you have available to sleep are in uncomfortable situations where it's really hard to sleep. So this last week, for example, I haven't gotten probably half the sleep I could have gotten, just because either it was uncomfortable, or a lot of the times it's just like I'm overstimulated. And so the environment is so intense that it can just be really hard to relax enough to fall asleep. And I've always had this problem working events, and we're usually still setting up as the crowds are arriving, and trying to finish getting set up as we start selling stuff, and somehow shove a sandwich in your mouth and go. And next thing you know, it's 6:30 and you're trying to get ready to go into the show while you're still selling stuff. And then you go to the show, and there's like an hour that's super intense after the show called blowout, where everyone comes out and sure you're familiar with it, and if people are
I
looking
am.
for food.
I've
Yeah.
been on the other end of that, looking for grilled cheese sandwiches and cute necklaces and a new shirt or dress. You made me think about the love-hate relationship with the festival community. Like, that going to a festival is exhausting on multiple levels, and there's such a cool vibe about it, right? Everybody's so excited, and they're in love with the music, they're in love with the community, but then there's also this dark underbelly of, like, I mean, the nitrous tanks are one example of that. And if the listeners don't know what that is, it's it's these knuckleheads that are not usually Phish fans or music festival fans or music fans at all. They're coming in to make a lot of money in about a 30 to 45-minute time period off of people getting high off of nitrous oxide. And they bring in these tanks, they bring in these balloons, and it is chaos. What I think is great is recognizing, that no pipe dream is perfect, right?
Mhm.
That you have this passion for bringing your product to the people, and you have a passion for music and the musical communities that you're involved in, and being a part of those, you also become very intimate with what makes them great and really what tears the community down.
I had to be very wary of that and be very cautious to not put myself in a position where I could get hurt, like literally hurt by someone. So that's something I've always been aware of and always tried to keep my distance from. And it also has informed what I've done with Little Hippie, which is to create a space that's the antidote to that, to create a space that is colorful and joyful and fun and also safe. And, when I first started, I didn't know any other women that were vendors, especially not independent ones. I knew ones that were couples. It's a really predatory environment for young women. And you see young women in situations where they think they're in this like free, love and everything's sunshine and beautiful, and unfortunately not everyone is. And so I've had situations where I've sheltered some young women in my booth, and I've always wanted to make sure that I had a space that was that kind of safety. And selling kids clothes, I also want parents to feel safe bringing their kids around and feel like, that they can be comfortable having their kids in my space, and that nothing's going to happen that they wouldn't want their kids to see in my space. To answer your original question a little bit more, like maybe a little more positively too, like some of the fun things about it is really fun selling stuff to people at shows. It is really fun to make stuff all year, to be home. I've been working at home long before the rest of the world was working at home. And it's like I would have these two extremes where I was home alone for months, and then I was in this environment with thousands of people on a daily basis. And I love the chaos, even though it is total sensory overwhelm, and I, do have to be conscious to balance out that like adrenaline over like the overload of adrenaline. Like I didn't understand all that stuff when I was younger, and I just burned myself. Like I just thrived on adrenaline and didn't realize the physical and emotional consequences of that until much later.
What would you say is your biggest challenge or roadblock right now?
It's knowing where to put my energy and how to spend my time, knowing choosing where I should be. I'm doing a lot of different things. And not just like you said at the beginning of the conversation about wearing different hats, but I literally have different places that I need to be. I have a brick and mortar shop here in Brooklyn. I have a booth on the road. I've got work I need to do at home at my desk without the distractions of other things around me. So, and then I have, other things that I'd like to do. Like there's travel that I would like to do for work outside of the music scene that I haven't gotten to do in a long time. And so it's that struggle to want to do it all. No, I can't do it all. And make a decision about where is the best place for me to put my time and energy. And I do often feel, like I'm just not keeping up.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot actually in this community, about that balance and alignment in self and our work, and finding ways to fill the cup up when the cup feels empty. Is there a book or a podcast or a resource or some type of foundational tool that you have used or that brings you inspiration, that reminds you that, look, we're all in this boat trying to paddle towards some end of joyful, lifelong living? Is there a resource that you might want to provide for us?
Yeah, there's a lot of media that has helped me over the years. I'm actually, I would say, very media dependent, but specific things. First of all, I love memoirs. And when I first got started, I read tons of memoirs, mostly written by people in the rock and roll scene, some business. And then I had a moment where I realized these are all men. Why am I reading the stories of men? Because that's what was available. And so I started actively looking for the stories of women, and as they became more available. So then I, read a ton of those. I love other people's stories. I'm so interested in them. And I love the feeling of relating to what someone else has gone through.
Yeah, I think, just reminding ourselves that there's historical context and wisdom, and that we can learn a lot from those that have come before us, especially women, listening to women. I think creating those sisterhood alliances and finding those elders in our community are really important. Well, Taylor, I know a lot of our listeners would love to sit and talk with you. Where can we find you?
Well, my primary website's littlehippie.com. And from there, you can get to all sorts of other places to learn more about me. But littlehippie.com. And then I'm also at Little Hippie LLC on all platforms, and at Taylor Swope Art on all platforms.
Fantastic. And where is your shop in Brooklyn? We have a lot of New Yorkers in our community.
Oh, come visit. It is in Williamsburg, right by the Domino's Sugar Factory. It's at 250 Kent Avenue.
Oh, I hope to see you on the road somewhere.
Yeah, that would be
And
great.
hopefully neither of us are so exhausted that we can't hang.
I'm never so exhausted I can't hang, but
Well, yeah, you seem like a veteran to me. I'm pretty worried about MSG. How am I going to do a 7 days of?
Are you doing all of it?
We're doing all 7.
Oh my God. Oh,
I'm
you're
too old for
brave.
this, I think. Well,
Well,
Taylor, thanks so much for joining us today. I'm so glad that we were able to share your story. And we'll be sharing your links and more information about Taylor Swope in the description of this podcast episode. So don't hesitate to look at that information as well. Thanks so much for joining us, Taylor.
thanks. Have a great night. Bye.
Thanks for joining us today in the Executives Lounge, where we bust open the doors, slam through the ceilings, and make sure that we have a spot at the table and that we are the lounge. I am Christine Fauner, your executive leadership expert, continuously looking for those executive leaders that seek community, continuous learning, and have a desire to find the next adventure. Join us next time. Join our Facebook group, Roam Your Soul, and you can also find us on Instagram at Roam Your Soul. And don't forget to check out the website for upcoming adventures, www.roamyoursoul.com. And if you're looking for that next executive level leadership coach, you can find me at roamyoursoul.com/Christine Fauner Coaching.